Hi guys, today I've got a little watercolour rose tutorial for you to watch. So here's my finished painting. I'm going to walk you step by step through my painting process. I took a photo of a rose that grows in my garden and I used it as reference for this painting. And all of the supplies that I used are listed in the description of the video. Okay, so let's get started. So after I put my drawing on the paper, the first thing I did was put some masking fluid on the stamens of the rose. And now that the masking fluid is dry, I can paint a wash of water all over the top of the rose. Now I'm painting a wash of Cobalt Violet over the top of the rose. And I drop in some Quinacridone Pink before the violet dries. Before the paint dries, I can lift out some highlights with my damp brush. Just patting the paint with my wet brush, and I'm just dabbing the brush on a paper towel as I go. Okay, so the wash is dry now, and I'm just re-wetting one of the petals with some water. And then I pick up some of the Cobalt Violet. And then I use it just to deepen the colour on this petal here. And I start to move around the rose, painting different petals, deepening the colour as I go. I wet each petal before I work on it, which just helps to keep my edges soft, and it means I don't have to rush quite so much. Just washing in this area here. And while that area is wet, I can drop in some Quinacridone Pink just onto the wet paint. Now up here I'm dropping in some Winsor Blue onto the wet paint. So I'm just speeding this section up. So this is the Cobalt Violet, and then I drop in some Winsor Blue while it's still wet. So I wet the area with water that I want to paint in some of the Cobalt Violet, and then I drop in some Winsor Blue, and that just creates a nice shadow. So I wet the petal with water, paint on the Cobalt Violet. The water keeps my paint edges soft. I can soften edges further if I need to, just with a damp brush. And then I can drop in some of the Winsor Blue again, just to deepen the colour in the shadows. And then if I need to soften any edges, I can just use my damp brush to do that. So I'm using water all over the petal. I paint the water as carefully as I paint the paint. And then on goes the Cobalt Violet. And then some Winsor Blue. Just softening that edge there with some water. And a little bit more blue here. So wetting the petal next to it with some water. Painting on the Cobalt Violet. Further softening edges with the damp brush. And then some Winsor Blue onto the wet Cobalt Violet. Just deepens the colour. Now I'm going to use my deepest colour. This is Rose of Ultramarine. And I use this colour just to paint the darkest areas that I see on the rose. So at the moment I'm painting on dry paper, just with my liner brush. And while that paint's wet, I can come in with some darker pigment and just deepen the area even further. This is when I start to really enjoy the painting. It's when I start to add all the darkest dark areas. It's time to remove the masking fluid from the centre of the flower now. Back to the Cobalt Violet now. I'm just painting on dry paper here. Now for the centre of the rose, and I'm just washing in some Naples yellow onto the stamens. And before that area dries, I can drop in some burnt sienna here and there. So this is just burnt sienna, and I'm just painting around the little white highlighted parts that were covered with the masking fluid. Back to the dark parts now. This is the rose of ultramarine again, and I'm just painting on the dry paper, just filling in all the little dark areas that I see. Softening the edge with water now. Just deepening the colour. And I have to use this fine brush because it's just a small rose, it's not a very big painting. Softening the edge with water again. Wetting this area first, and then I can paint onto the wet paper with the rose of ultramarine. Deepening the colour. Wetting this area here with water, and the rose of ultramarine again. The water on the paper disperses the pigment. In the centre of the flower here, I'm painting on dry paper. And the rose of ultramarine just deepens areas and defines edges. A little bit of water up here. And then the rose of ultramarine again. Just deepens the shadow in that area. Softening the edge just with my damp brush. And there's another little area in there between the petals that I can paint the ultramarine on. And over here as well. Just need to deepen this cup area of the rose. So this is watery rose of ultramarine that I'm painting on. And I just keep fiddling with the rose of ultramarine until I'm happy with the way the rose is looking. And I think I'm just about there. I'm going to start on the leaves now, so I need a new colour for my palette. This is Winsor Lemon, and I'm going to use it as an underwash under the leaves, and it will make them glow with light. So the first thing I'll do is paint a wash of water over the top of them. And then I paint that beautiful lemon onto the wet paper. And I paint in the stem as well. And when it's dry, I just rub over some of those pencil lines just to reduce them. And now I'm just re-wetting one side of the leaf with water. And now it's time for the green. And the colour I'm using is called Permanent Sap Green. It's a Winsor Newton colour, and I use it quite often when I'm painting leaves. I just make sure I get a nice straight vein line down the centre of the leaf. And then I can fill in the rest of that side just with the green. And I can leave a small amount of the yellow underwash showing through the green. And now I'm just using my damp brush just to remove a little bit of colour at the top of the leaf. So I'm just dabbing my brush on a paper towel as I do it. This just removes a small amount of paint and leaves a lovely highlight showing on the leaf. And while that dries, I can start working on the stem. So I have painted some water underneath this green first before I started painting the green. Just working my way slowly down the stem. Now this is a little bit of burnt sienna. And while that paint's still wet, I could just drop the burnt sienna in. And now I'm wetting down the other half of this leaf, but I make sure I leave a little line of dry paper down the centre where the vein sits. And while that paper's still wet, I do exactly the same thing on this other side, but I make sure I leave that little yellow centre vein down the centre showing. I'm holding my brush right up on its tip so that I have good control. And just as before, I'm just removing a small amount of paint just to create a highlight at the top of the leaf. So dabbing my brush on a paper towel. And down the bottom here I've just dropped in some Winsor Lemon. And I do the same thing on this leaf at the back. And some Sap Green on this one as well. And now some Winsor Lemon, just to blend with the green. Drawing in a few pencil lines just to guide myself. And off I go again with the water, just speeding this area up. So this is Sap Green again. I leave a little bit of the yellow showing through. Now I'm just removing the paint like I did before, just to create some highlights, and dropping in some more Winsor Lemon. Wet the other side of the leaf and I make sure I leave the vein showing, so that's dry paper down the centre. And then on with the Sap Green again. I get the vein in first and then I can just fill in the rest of the leaf. And some Winsor Lemon as well. Removing some of the paint to create a highlight again. Just lets that underwash show through. Wet this part of the leaf and on goes the Sap Green. Moving on to the stem now while the leaf dries. A little bit of green. Then I wet the rest of it. And this is burnt sienna. Some more Sap Green on this leaf up here. And underneath this leaf I've mixed some Winsor Lemon with the Sap Green just to create a lighter green. Just speeding this area up again. So Sap Green on the damp paper. Some water on this one. Sap Green again, leaving that little vein showing. Taking off some paint. Water again. Sap Green. Taking off a little bit of paint. And this is the lighter green mixed from the lemon and the green. Some burnt sienna now on the stem. Just leaving a little bit of that yellow underwash showing as well. Now I'm re-wetting underneath the flower here on this stem because I want to deepen the colour. And this darker green is called Perylene Green. Just running it down the side of the stem. And my paper is damp where I'm working, just so the paint will bleed across the stem and not create any hard edges. Just deepening the colour up here with some more Sap Green now. Now I've re-wet the side of this leaf with some water, and this is Perylene Green. I just want to create a few little darker areas on the leaves. So I wet this area with water. And then I drop in some of the Perylene Green, just to deepen the colour there. Same thing up here, this is Perylene Green again on damp paper. And under here as well. Some on the tip of this leaf. And some on the tip of this one as well. And there's my finished painting. Thank you for watching. I hope you really enjoyed the video. The two roses here are the subjects of just 2 of the classes that I have published over on Skillshare. These are full-length, real-time tutorials with voiceover. I provide the line drawings and reference photos so that you can paint along with me. The links to the classes are in the description of this video. If you liked this video and found it helpful, then make sure you hit the like button below and share it with your friends. And be sure to hit the subscribe button because I'll be posting new tutorials every week. If you'd like to request a tutorial, then let me know in the comments below. Thanks guys. Let's do this. If there's a particular tutorial you'd like me to If you'd like to request a tutorial, then let me know in the comments. Thanks guys. Thanks guys, do it again. If you liked this video and found it helpful, then make sure you hit the like button below. If you liked